I want to say good morning to everybody who was here last night and welcome to everybody who wasn't, but we're just really, really pleased to have you here today for this symposium, which I think is going to be absolutely wonderful. We've got such great speakers, such a wonderful topic, of course, and we just can't go wrong on this. I want to thank again the board and staff, the board of directors and staff of the Ashley Bryant Center for entrusting Ashley's archives to the Kislak Center at the Penn Libraries. We are so thrilled that we have it here and have been able to do things with that collection. They've been wonderful to work with. I'm so excited to have them, and I'm so excited to have all the family who are here today. So a really, really immense amount of gratitude to all of you for everything that you've done. I also want to thank, unfortunately, David McKnight, one of my curatorial colleagues who has just recently retired, can't be here because he's been ill. And I know he really wanted to be here. He may be online. So I want to say thank you, David, for everything you did. You and I were the first two to go up to Boston to meet with Nick Clark. And that was really a wonderful event. Just having that first opportunity to spend some time with Ashley's archive. So, thank you, David. Even though you're not here in person, I know you're here in spirit. I also want to thank my colleague and husband, John Pollock, who puts up with a lot and who has been wonderful at also being up there with me on the island, helping out as we worked through the collection and did all that kind of work. So it's been wonderful to have both of them. And thanks to Vanessa, Barry, Sandy, the Leafs, Joanne, and Nick for all their hospitality every time we've been up there doing work, because it's been great. It's always fun. I feel like we're a big family when we're up there. So it's really terrific. Yes. Here at Penn, I want to thank a few colleagues. I want to thank Alita Arthurs, who's always wonderful at giving us great receptions, great food whenever we have an event. I want to thank Betsy Deming and Matt Roberts for doing all their hard work of getting those PowerPoints together and trying to make today an enormous success visually for everybody. I want to thank my colleagues Eric Dillog and Chris Lippa, who've both been instrumental in getting a lot of the images photographed. And Eric has been important, and he's director of operations here, and he's been important in getting everything moved forward to help out in every way he can. I know he's helped a lot of the speakers get into the system, which is complicated here at Penn. I want to thank Sarah Rydell and Elizabeth McDermott for their work on getting the exhibition ready and be put up in the gallery, because it's so beautiful. And I want to thank Brittany Merriam and Lydia Dagan Sutton for their work designing it and installing it. I also want to thank again Lorraine Ballard-Morrill for being here last night to speak to Javaka Steptoe. That was wonderful to hear him and hear about collage, which I think is such an important element in children's literature, and especially African-American children's literature. And Vanessa Lloyd Gambadi and her colleague Totomi Store. Vanessa's here today. She has been wonderful at helping me move things forward on this and get some publicity for this and participate in this event. So I want to thank everybody there, because without all of you, this wouldn't have happened. And thanks to all the speakers who are here, because all the speakers make this possible. Finally, we had all hoped that Ashley would be here with us in his 100th anniversary year, but that was not to be. But even so, we recognize that he is here with us in spirit and will be long into the future. So enjoy today's symposium.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I have the pleasure to introduce the first panel this morning, a topic that's very, very important to me and my work here at Penn, teaching children's literature, and really is, with Javaka last night and the history of his family and contributions to the field, and this morning with E.B. Lewis. I mean, these were the folks who have been doing this work for a long, long time. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce this morning first artist and illustrator E.B. Lewis, who needs very little introduction. But I will say that for the last 30 years in my own work, starting as a teacher and a scholar of children's literature, my autobiography has followed along your work. It has been there with me all along the way, from the mid-90s and into books like, you know, I Love My Hair in 1999, I think was one of the first of that, you know, on that subject, and onward to the books that you did with Jacqueline Woodson and Each Kindness and The Other Side and the book talking about Bessie, the category Scott King Award. I mean, this is a long legacy of very, very important work. Preaching to the Chickens, incredible book and I teach these books and I've shared them with children and with teachers, and they are some of the best in the field, and it elevates the work, and it is the kind of stuff that I seek out to share with children and to share with teachers. So E.B. Lewis, over 75 books, something like that, 85.
And who's counting?
Who's counting? Wow. So many accolades and really leading and pushing this field forward. So we're going to talk about the creation, publication, and dissemination of diverse literature, but we're going to begin with a paramount creator in the tradition of the legacy of Ashley Bryan. Please join me in welcoming E.B. Lewis.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good morning. I'm not going to stand back there. I want to be with my people. Raise your hand if you're an artist. And when I say artist, I'm not talking about just the visual artist. I'm talking about the 7 arts, writers, musicians, so on and so forth. Oh, it's a lot of you in this room. Very nice. Someone said, what did you? Oh, you should not have to tell her to put her hand up. First, I want to say I am honored to be a part of this symposium, to honor someone that I adore, respect, and admire. He was a giant. And to be part of this history, you know, that's what this is. History is being made every day, you know, and whether or not we realize it or not. And this is a history, the day of history, and I'm going to be listed when they talk about this in that agenda, that I was here and I represented the arts, represented illustrators and the whole thing that we do for children. And so I'm honored again, and thank you, Penn Library, for this opportunity. So with that, talking about giants, and I'm thinking about when I was a child, my Uncle Bradley, and I'm going to show you my Uncle Bradley, well, not right now, pull him up, but as a child, my uncle would ask, we would often ask this question. He would say, you know, there are 3 different types of human beings. There's the subhuman, the human, and the superhuman. And I'm like 12 years old. Yeah, it's about 6th grade. Is that the age you are around? Yeah, okay. So he says, you know, the 3 human beings. I said, no. He says, I'm gonna explain them to you. So the subhuman, we know about those. Those are the ones who basically do all the heinous things in our society. You know, those are the bad people. You know, the things that do things that you want, they create this atmosphere of hatred and what have you. And he just went on and on. And then he says the human. Now, so we have the subhuman, we have the human. Now the human is the one who witnesses these things, and their response to it is, well, can't do anything. I'm only human. And then there's a superhuman. And he would ask me, then he talked about the superhuman. These are the individuals who actually saw and witnessed these things and say, I'm not going to let this happen on my watch. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to care. And it's about caring, right? It really is about caring. And you can't care from a seated position. Caring requires you to get up and put something into action. You know, it's a physical activity. And so when I bring those things, I bring that up because I think of this man here as a superhuman. He's one of the giants that walked among us. And my uncle would ask me, so which one are you? I said, well, 12, you know. I don't know yet, you know, but I will find out, and I will hope to let you know when that time comes. And this individual is going to be, he is my role model for that. You know, not only a giant, because we live amongst giants and angels. He's both. You know? He was both. And so I wanted to just put that out there. And again, thanks for the opportunity. I'm here to talk about process. And I scared some of you when you look through my slides and I had over 189 of them. It's like, he does know he only has 15 minutes, right? And so, yes, I have 15 minutes and I'm going to fly through these, but I want to talk about my love. This is my life. I do this whether or not I was getting paid for it or not. It was what protected me. It's this, I talked about my uncle. This is little EB, you know, that's me with grandma. It was a wonderful time. My childhood, that age was grand. My first 5 years was grand. My uncles, two of them were artists. One was a sculptor, went to the Pennsylvania Academy. Actually, it was the Philadelphia College, it wasn't Philadelphia College of Philadelphia Museum, you know, the museum school. And the other one was Tyler. My other uncle went to Tyler. And so you see that lamp there was one of my uncle's lamps. It was a sculptor. And so throughout that household, there was real art. And then my father was a conservationist at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. So I grew up in that wonderful inner environment that was surrounded by people who thought. And my uncle would always say, you know, you're an artist, you know, we're scary people. And we upset the societies. And all through history, whenever there was an overthrow of power, a coup d'etat, right, the artists were the first to be executed, utterly removed. And we're talking about Nazi Germany, Communist China, Cuba, Spain, all the way through. Anytime there was an overthrow of power, the first people that they came after were the artists, to the critical thinkers, right? We're the critical thinkers. And so he infused me with that. And I wanted more than anything to be an artist. I wanted to be that person that was scary, you know, and because I suffered as a child, I struggled. And so this man here saved my life. Oh, here's little Earl. Oh no, this guy scared me. Scared the living daylights out of me. And my uncle, that's my hero. And so I know I only have 15 minutes. So I really want to talk about the process. And my process basically, and how I got into this industry was through the fine arts. I am a fine artist / illustrator, and hence the term Artistrator. That's where the term Artistrator comes from. And so this is my work, my early pieces. And so this, you'll see the segue into how I go from my fine art and went into illustration. So the paintings that I was doing, I was basically documenting life. That's what artists do. We document life. And more than that, there was a quote when James Baldwin, there was a wonderful documentary of James Baldwin. It's called The Price of the Ticket. If you have not seen it, it's a must-see. And when he passed, he was in France, in St. Paul de Vence. I went there to visit his where he lived. And his brother, after his passing, was asked, what would Jimmy say about his legacy? He said, oh, James talked about it often. He said, when they sift through the wreckage and brush away the detritus, hopefully they will uncover something that I left behind, something that somebody else can use. And I was like, wow, that's it. To leave something behind, right? And so in these early years, these early stages of my work, was basically, I was not thinking about leaving things behind. It wasn't that serious at that point. I was just getting my chops up, getting to see if I can basically paint what I see and what I feel. And it was really about feeling as much as having the execution, the ability to put down what I see and do it in a way that people would feel it. And it's like an ingredient. You know, I learned that that emotion that you put in is very much like an ingredient that you put in a cake. You know, if you're trying to make a lemon cake, if you don't put the lemon in it, it won't taste like a lemon cake. And so feeling is an emotion that you put in. And so these paintings that I did early in my career are just paintings of this life, a day in the life, right? And so I'm not going to talk about them all. I'm just going to just give you a sense of what I was thinking about. This one here, I was invited to a horse stable. Family they were raising these beautiful thoroughbred horses, and they wanted me to come paint their horses. I got there, jumped out of the truck, and I was like, whoa, horses are gorgeous. But then there was this wheelbarrow. I said, wow, look at that wheelbarrow. And so I went and got excited about the wheelbarrow. I didn't paint the horse the whole time. They never invited me back, but I had a great time painting that wheelbarrow. I mean, look, you think about it. Wait a minute, I go back. There's no dirt in that wheelbarrow. I literally took the time to fill the wheelbarrow with dirt. So they were like, what is he doing? What inspires an artist? So just looking at light and shadows and thinking about the mystery behind the shadow. I loved Caravaggio for that reason. And then I came out of the school, and when I think about illustration, I came out of that school of working with live models from NC Wyeth. And working with the live models and dressing them up. And so you'll see, so these right now are just capturing life. I just want you to see the work prior to illustration. Documenting light. Light to me is a subject. Light and subject, and light and shadow are like subjects to me. So I use them as such. I put them in when I feel that I need to put that shadow in because it's going to say something. It's going to reflect, it's going to talk about mystery. And so mystery is important in the work, right? So what happens there? Look at that mystery that's happening there. It intrigues you. That's what I want. I want the work to be intriguing. I want it to linger. How do you walk in, especially in a book? I don't want you to flip through the pages. I want you to stop for a moment and say, what is this? What's going on here? Why am I stuck? Why I can't move? And the reason you can't move is because of a little thing called gestalt. We're trying to close that gap. Think about a painting, trompe-l'oeil, right? Where an artist has painted an image that is so real, like a dollar bill, that you almost go up and want to take it off the wall, but it's only a painting. And so the brain goes into that room and sees a room of trompe-l'oeil, and it goes, wow, that's fascinating. Look, he's even painted a license plate. You can read where it's from, where the car's from. That's amazing. And the brain goes, I got it, because everything is there. I got it. And it goes through, and you realize in a room with all these paintings, you're in and out of it within an hour's time. Because the brain goes, I got it, I got it, I got it, nothing stopped it. But as soon as you create that gap, that mystery, the brain goes, and it becomes this glitch, and it can't complete it. So that's why paintings with that mystery keeps you involved and engaged the whole time. See, I don't think I can do this in 15 minutes. Okay, so here are just images again, just things, images that just fascinate this little girl here, just finding that I love painting children. This is long before children's books. Capturing that mood, that pensive mood. And this painting is as much about the little boy as, about that wall, his foundation crumbling around him, because this is in Charleston, South Carolina, where basically gentrification. And so his community, his neighborhood is gone. And so this is what this painting is about, making those kind of conscious decisions and making those commentary. Working in mediums of, this is still watercolor, but I'm working it as if it's an oil. And so I'm kind of testing and being afraid of not being afraid of being afraid. If that makes sense. Yes, you have. Oh. You're welcome. Yes. Oh, see, I ain't gonna get out of here. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I worked at the academy last time in 5 years.
Mhm.
And I say Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
I did statues and statues and statues before. The problem with the school system is there's that
Yes.
these are all the guys that may not be up to the big statues, you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I told them, instead of the school system isn't teaching them like martial arts and yoga. That's why we all want. We had time to relax themselves.
Thank you. So, yeah, go ahead. I know this is, I've never. They range from, I would say, 11 by 14 to 6 feet, 7 feet. Some, yeah. I'm working on rolls of paper, watercolor paper, arches, 300 pound, 400 pound. So I'm working. I will staple my work to a mason. Sheetrock. And so if I can work 8 feet. And so I've done exactly as large as 8 feet. The whole extent of a 4 by 8 sheet of watercolor paper. Well, no. Let's because I don't. Let's hold the question. We're gonna have a question and answer period. Okay, so yeah. So I'm trying to get through these. These are just images that I travel. I'm traveling and seeing the world and putting that into as part of the process. Is getting as much information as I can and trying to change. And then and I'm there and I'm doing this work and I'm getting excited and then all of a sudden it stopped. Because now I'm realizing that my work is not cogent. It's not important. It's not valuable. And so what's going on? I need to say something. My work needs to talk about something more deeper, the injustice. And so I stopped painting for 2.5 years. And in that process, what I did is I went out looking for art. I looked at things. I wanted to get inspired about what's going on in the world of art. And I came across this piece here. It's a piece by a Jamaican American artist by the name of Michael Richards. And he did a body cast of himself, of a Tuskegee Airman, dressed himself as a Tuskegee Airman, and then had these planes crash into his body. So it's speaking of the injustice of the Tuskegee Airmen and really referencing St. Sebastian being shot with the arrows. Okay. And I'm like, I looked at this piece, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. I want my work to do that. And so I go over to the little plaque and it talks about Michael Richards and it said that he was a Jamaican American artist and that he did this piece in lieu of and talked about the injustice and all that, but it said he must have had a premonition of his own death because he perished in the 9/11 plane crash. When the planes crashed into the World Trade Center, his studio was at the top of the World Trade Center and that's how he lost his life. I mean, the irony of that, here he's doing a body cast of himself with planes crashing into his own body. It blew me away. And so I go there, I'm taking this all in and I get to my studio and I made sure that I went into my studio every day. Because my favorite, as much as I travel, my favorite place in all the world is my studio. I love being in that space. So if I'm not working, I'm there, at least I just go in, even if I have to sweep the floors. I want to be in there to see and maybe something's going to come, something's going to happen. So one day it did. The ceiling opened up, the ceiling opened up and the creator dropped this pearl in my lap. And what it was telling me that I needed to do this. I needed to create this image on this lottery ticket. So I went out at 7 o'clock. This happened, this vision came to me around 11 o'clock at night. I went out to Wawa. You know what Wawa is, right? And when I get to Wawa, I'm looking for 2 things. I'm looking for lottery tickets and gum. That's what the creator told me to go get this. And so I get there and they did, at that time, they were not making lottery tickets. They did not have lottery tickets, the scratch off kind, but they had the gum. And I remember when I was a child, we would take the Wrigley gum, take it out, take the rip, and you take the silver and remove the silver from the wax. How many of you have ever done that? Oh, wow, look at my age here. And we would actually take and burnish it onto the desk. And then we would take it and wrap it around a penny to make it appear like a dime. Right? And so then they would figure it out, like, get out of here, that's a penny, you know. And so I knew that. So I get home and I said, okay, I don't have the lottery ticket, but I can just figure this thing out. And so I'm running around, and then I get home and I try to do this thing, and they don't make the gum that way anymore. So I'm now upset. I can't figure out, I got to get this out of my head. And so I'm running around the house trying to find a piece of little foil that I can do this thin enough. And in the refrigerator is a piece of chocolate I was able to do it. And this is what a little sketch I did. just to see if I can do it. And then I needed to say, all right, can I do it with gold leaf? And so these are children on lottery tickets. So I'm saying that our children are so valuable that they're more valuable than something that you can scratch off of a lottery ticket. So they're my lotto icons. It's like being on an archaeological dig and you find something very precious underneath the earth, and you brush away the dirt, whatever, and uncover this thing that's very valuable. The lottery tickets, I never scratch. I don't know if they're winners or losers. So I have stacks of lottery tickets from all over the world. Whenever I travel, I get the lottery tickets and I take the images from the children of that period, of that region, and that's what goes on my lottery tickets. Okay? And so they're then framed like, let me give you a sample here. Like that piece there are about 40 lottery tickets on there, never scratched. They're gonna be a $100,000 winning ticket in my lot, and I don't care. So it would take the piss right out of it, right? And so then I'm framing them like medieval 12th century Byzantine icons, right? To uncover these children that if we scratch, sometimes we scratch a ticket and it says loser, you don't need to scratch anymore, lost, just like our children. We scratch and not deep enough, we go, it's gonna be a lost cause. And that's what I'm talking. So this is my injustice. And I'm doing this, in children's books. I'm like, whoa, okay, now how do I go there from here to there? There's a large piece. And then my camera flipped to children's books. It was the world opened up, and there are no accidents in the universe, as I feel. And so this work was leading, the work that I was doing in my fine art led me right into this. And I refused it when I was first asked to come into children's books. They asked my agent, who's still my agent now, Jeff Dwyer, asked me whether or not I wanted to be a children's book illustrator. And I said, no. And he said, why? I said, because I'm a fine artist, not an illustrator. And he said, what's the difference? And I explained. He said, you should see what's going on in kids' books today. There's a lot of fine art happening. And he told me of artists that I didn't know, like Jerry Pinkney, Ashley Bryan. He was naming these people, and I had no idea. I have children, but I was looking at Eric Carle and Susan B. Williams and people like Vera B. Williams and people like that. Never knew these other artists. So I went out and I investigated, and I found that, yes, some of the best artwork in the country is being done in kids' books today. And so this is just some of the pieces here. And then I'm going to show you the process of how I actually create the book. These are images from the books. This is how I got into children's books. This is what sparked the conversation between Jeff Dwyer and myself. This painting was inside of, wait a minute. Let's go back. This painting here was inside of this magazine, and that's my painting on the cover. And that's what caused Jeff to call me up and say, I saw your work. I want to know if you want to do this work. And so my first book was Fire on the Mountain. It's an Ethiopian folktale, still in print. Over 80-some books. It's amazing that one book is still in print like that. And this is how I start. I start with thumbnails, little thumbnail sketches, just to get me a sense of what is, how to envision this book. And I realize, and I look at a book as if it's a movie taking place between two pieces of cardboard. Right? And so I needed to think like a director. And that's how I'm thinking. That's how each book comes to me like that. How do I make this, turn this language into this visual language? And that's how I see it. I am a visual storyteller. Right? I'm not an illustrator. It's a difference. I'm a visual storyteller. Right? I work with narrative. And narrative is utterly important. It's about page turn, and about each image moves a page forward. And so I'm consciously thinking about how do I get emotion, narrative, and anticipation into that process. And then I find, first that was the thumbnails, and I take each thumbnail and I blow it up to enlarge it to become a dummy book. I take the words, I paste them down so I know what the words are going to look like with my images. This is about a little boy named Alamayu. He lives in the high mountains of Ethiopia. He's watching his family's sheep. And so he's playing the flute. So now basically a lot of that is in the text, but a lot of it's not. So I'm extending the text. That's what should happen in a picture book. You should not just copy or just word verbatim of these images and not put your own voice into it. I want you to see it from my vision. This book, this amazing story that I accepted because I love the story. Now you're going to see how I would tell it. Then I go to do the work. The work is important. The research. So the author did all that research, but because it's now I'm taking this and turning it into my story, I have to do it equally as much, if not more, right, of research. So I'm doing that research. And I spent hours in the print and picture department looking at references. So here I am going through each image, trying to get these images that I need. And then I'm going to go into the stacks. And I'm going to read, I'm going to find out about this culture. This is Ethiopia. I've never been to Ethiopia. I've been there now, but doing this book, it was not. And so then I find my models. My models are live people, real children that I actually I went to an Ethiopian restaurant in West Philadelphia. And I said, I need a little 7-year-old boy. They said, well, we don't serve them. Funny guy. And so he says, no. And I said, no. He says, okay, I got somebody, found a little guy. I dressed up him in his native clothing, took him out. It's talking about the high mountains of Gondar. We don't have mountains in Philadelphia. So I had to find a high hill behind the art museum. Big stones, boulders. Perfect. So I dressed him up, took him out the art museum, put him in front of a great big stone. Because you remember the reference here. Wait, let's go. There, the stone that you see there. The flute, he's playing a flute, so I put a makeshift flute in his mouth. And then you take that and combine that with that. You got that. So this is the references I'm getting from the library to get the setting for the story, which is essential, right? Another example, the waterfall that you see there, the little boy playing a flute. I needed to get a waterfall, so I go to the library, get my waterfall. I think I get my little kid with his flute. And now when I'm doing this little kid, basically, I'm paying anywhere between $20 to $50 an hour for my models. And so this little kid is working. I have him say, okay, I want you to think about this process. You're off, and I tell him the story. I need him to know the story. And now you're no longer who you are. You're this little kid in the story. You're acting. And I need you to walk towards me, and you walk to him in such a manner that you're thinking about your sister, because that's who you're going to find. And I need you to do that and walk towards me. And he's walking as I'm taking a shot. So I'm taking a shot, and I said, okay, got it. And then go back. Come again, take the shot. And then I go, okay, take it again. All right, come on. Great, take the shot. And I move different angles. And then I realized, because I watch movies and I love movies, I am going to then start moving around the figure, because my mind's eye says, in my thumbnails said that I wanted to do this angle, but maybe I might see something in the other process when I go around the figure. So I think about when movies, they blow a bridge, right? They can only afford to blow the bridge one time. So what they do is they have cameras positioned all around the perimeter. And then they say blow, and all of them go. I can't do that. So what I do is walk around the figure. So when you look at my images of my references, there's about 40, 50 shots of him, of only one that I'm going to get and use. And then I have this guy. So you have this plus this equals this. Okay. So working with those references and putting them together. So basically what it is Frankensteining, right? Because there are images that I'm working with there are 10 different images that I'm referencing, and I have to put them together to make it look seamless, as if it's appeared all together one time. Okay? So I can do this all day. So tell me, where am I? 2 more minutes. Okay, so now, going back, I figured this out. It's not mine. So this is another Ethiopian story. I need to go to Ethiopia. So I hopped on a plane by myself, and I went with the author, Chris Kurtz, and the two of us went to Ethiopia, and we spent 5 weeks there researching the Pigeon Boys. And when I got there, oh my God, it was an amazing time, and seeing the sights, the visions, and working with the kids, painting with them, and just amazing. And these are very poor children. You know, if you looked at their feet, there are no shoes, but yet they were focused. Look at that. And I go to schools and I said, look at this. This was not set up. These kids realized that I was bringing something into their world that they felt deemed important. And it became very clear to me when you drive down the streets of Addis Ababa, there's a billboard, and it's a phrase coined by Nelson Mandela, and it says, knowledge is power. And so that's what they understand. And so this is wonderful things that like opportunity that this great business gives me, allows me, affords me. And I just love it so. And these are just images, one after the other, of this books and stories that I love. And there are no two books of mine alike because there are no two stories alike. Right? And so these are just images that you'll see through my work. And I'm just going to go through them real quick in my 2 minutes that I have. Working with some really amazing authors, right? Amazing authors. I love my hair, and this one here is funny because I go through these crazy, wacky things to get the image. And so in this case, the little girl at the end of the story is wearing these pigtails. And she says, one of these days, these pigtails are going to turn into wings, and I'm just going to take off and fly. And I'm like, oh my God, that'd be so cool. So a little girl flying around with pigtail wings. But wait a minute, kids are not flying yet. So how am I going to get this little girl to look? Oh, I know. I'll string her up. And so what I did, I strung her up. Literally strung her up. You know, I mean, she is dangling there with 2x4s and dog leashes. And her father is 6'8", right? He's a big dude. So she's over his head. That's why you don't see the mom. But she's in the background having a fit the whole time. Whatever you do not drop my daughter. And she didn't want to come down from there because she actually thought she was flying. And her sister on the top said, can I do it next? Can I do it next? I'm going to do it next. And I do it next. And being an illustrator is very much like being a magician. You know, abracadabra, I turned this little girl's cornrows into cornrows. 2 minutes are up. So anyway, I just want to thank you again for this opportunity. And man, great. Thank you. Thank you. There's a whole lot more, but we don't have the time. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wow. Now I'm going to introduce the next speaker on our panel. Allison Morris works on the other end of things as a book buyer, a nationally recognized children's book buyer with over 25 years experience in selecting quality books for young readers. Her interests have been in helping to put books in kids' hands that are engaging, that affirm identities, build empathy, and create community. She originated a very popular book blog called Shelf Talker at Publishers Weekly. You may know of that. She was senior editor at Scholastic Book Clubs, has bought books for independent bookstores, and currently is the senior director of title selection for the nonprofit First Book. We're excited to hear from your work around getting these wonderful books into young people's hands and are looking forward to hearing from your experience. Please welcome Allison Morris.
Thank you. It is a joy to be here in this room with all of you this morning and remembering one of my favorite humans in the universe. I apologize in advance. I'm a crier. I'm going to try and keep it together and hopefully not set anyone else off in the process. I was deciding what should I put on this sort of opening slide with this joyful picture. I love that these kids just all clustered around this one book. And what came to mind for me is what Ashley always signed in his books, which is peace, love, joy. And that sort of combined with the wonderful author Pat Mora's book joy that she talks about a lot, the importance of giving kids book joy. And so I was thinking about all of those things when I sort of tried to throw together slides today. My talk is going to be very different from EB's. I have way fewer slides and I'm envious. I didn't think you could do 180. That was nice slides. And I realized this morning when anyway, I stripped out some things that I'm now thinking, oh, maybe I should have left those in, but that's okay. I'm going to keep my eye on the time because I can also easily fill 15, 20 minutes because this is a topic I care about so much. As you heard in my introduction, I have been a children's book buyer for 25 years. And I got my start at an independent bookstore in Indianapolis, but then my first job as a children's book buyer was at the Dartmouth bookstore in Hanover, New Hampshire. And Ashley, as many of you may know, used to teach at Dartmouth and was very close friends with Phoebe Stebbins, who was the owner of the Dartmouth bookstore. And Phoebe introduced us to Ashley when he came to the store at one point and said, "Oh, Allison, you have to go to Ashley's house." And Ashley said, "Oh, absolutely. If I'm not there, just let yourself in." And that was an unusual invitation that I then took him up on about 7 years later. It took me a little while to get all the way out to Islesford. But then my husband, Gareth Hines, is sitting right here, and I proceeded to become very close with Ashley. And for 15 years, we went up to visit him on Islesford and also had the joy of visiting him in Texas on a few occasions as well when he was living with his niece, Vanessa. So Ashley was a huge part of my life. I literally think about him every day. And the work I do is very much linked to the work that he helped bring into the world and inspire in so many other people as well. So Gareth is a children's book illustrator. He is best known as a graphic novelist. The Iliad and the Odyssey are his best known books. I also contribute book reviews to a really delightful blog podcast called Book Friends Forever, which is Newbery and Caldecott honor-winning author Grace Lynn and her editor Alvina Ling. And so if my voice sounds familiar to anyone, in particular people who are streaming this, it's possible you've heard me there. So I'm going to talk about First Book. This is the nonprofit that I have been with now for 10 years. And what we do principally is what is illustrated in this thank you note we got from a child. We take kids' bookshelves from the state of then and we bring them to the state of now, where you see there are many books and a very happy child in front of them. We provide brand new books and educational resources to educators and program leaders serving kids in need nationwide. And book access is a huge element of what we do because it is a huge element of educational equity. We cannot achieve educational equity without giving kids access to engaging, affirming, insightful content that really excites their enthusiasm for wanting to spend more time with books or just reading in general. We've been around for 30 years. We have a network of more than 550,000 educators, and they work in a variety of different settings, which I'll talk about shortly, with ages 0 to 18. We distribute 225 million books and resources to date, and we reach about 5 million children a year through the distributions that we do and through our site called the First Book Marketplace, which I'm going to talk about at length. So any Title I educator, any educator in a Title I eligible school or in a program that serves a very high percentage of families in need can register with us completely for free and get access to the books and other resources that we provide principally through our site. And the sign up is free. It takes about 5 minutes, and you can do that on the First Book Marketplace, which I am going to walk you through now. But just to say, this sort of image here that shows the types of programs that can sign up for us, if you think about the reach these programs have into their communities, it also gives you a sense of the challenges that the kids in those communities are facing. You know, shelters and clinics, that includes a lot of homeless shelters, a lot of families who are very highly disadvantaged, going through rough times in many cases, transitioning. They don't have a lot of stuff to keep with them. This question of how do they carry books with them is always something that our members are confronting. We have programs who send social workers into schools to train families in how to read aloud to babies. And we have, you know, classroom teachers who have kids coming to school, maybe all of whom are on free and reduced lunch, whose parents are working multiple jobs or who had very complicated, difficult relationships with schools themselves growing up and may not feel that school is a safe or comfortable place for them to be. And those schools are often using books as a way of sort of bridging connections between what's happening in the school and what's happening in the home, and also doing what they can to try to help build home libraries for those students and their families. So I'm thinking about those families all the time and doing the work that I'm doing every day. So I'm going to give you a little introduction to the First Book Marketplace. This is the site that our members go to access most of the resources we provide to them. And the URL is here. It is firstbookmarketplace.org. And what you see here is sort of a snapshot of the front page. And there's a big arrow pointing to the circle that says become a member, because often I'm doing a presentation for teachers and this is the thing they most want to know. Where do I go to sign up? So that is the easiest place to go. You can also sign up from our .org site. We have a nonprofit site that's sort of an informational about first book site. That is firstbook.org. And you can also sign up there, but I usually tell people to go here because you can browse what we have and see the bounty of what is available and then decide, yes, this is for me. It's not for me. I have yet to, I don't think to date I've had anyone say, I'm just not interested in this, unless you're not interested in books, in which case we just have a little more work to do with you. So it is a thoughtfully curated, always current selection of brand new books and educational resources at substantially reduced prices. And many times also, whenever possible, we make it free. And I will talk a little bit more about that as well. On our site, you will find brand new books. We curate new titles every season from our publishing partners, picture books, board books, beginning readers, all the way up through young adult novels, nonfiction. And the main really thrust of our model, and the thing that I think is the greatest thing about it, is that we do not dictate what educators are going to receive. They come to us and they choose the books that are going to be the best fit for their kids, their classroom, their students, whatever it is their goals are, what they're accomplishing. So we receive inventory two different ways. We receive donated cartons of books from children's book publishers. They send us excess. They reach out sometimes when they have a misprint or something unusual has happened, and they donate those to us, and our members come onto our site and they can pick those out and pay only for the shipping of those books. So you see this first book, Ballad and Dagger by Daniel Jose Older. This is a carton of 20 books and they're paying $14 to get those shipped to their school. 56 for $33. This is a graphic novel, brand new graphic novel actually by Jason Shiga. A lot of members come to us whose kids are super excited about books that feature characters they recognize from movies and TV. And that is another example of a very low cost, because the shipping the shipping is calculated by weight. And so that's $48 for 120 books. So a lot of members go to this portion of our site, the book bank, to stockpile books to give away throughout the year to send home with kids. A lot of our schools and partners function as feeding sites for families in the summer in particular. And so they will also have books on hand to give out to families when they come to also get food for their kids. And then we also have some very large quantity opportunities where members can actually opt to get an entire pallet of books. They are mystery in this case because we don't know what is in them. There's like a manifest for the whole shipment, but we don't know what quantities of each are in them. So there's a lot of language on that page. If you're looking at this thinking, oh, I need that for my program, just read all of the fine print so you understand you're going to need a pallet jack. There's a whole bunch of things involved. But it's a pretty amazing opportunity that a lot of people like to take advantage of. So what I do is manage the team that chooses the books that we are buying outright from publishers. So I just talked about donated. This is purchased content. So we are looking at new titles every season from our publishing partners and deciding what are the books that we think are most going to resonate with our members, with the kids they serve, engage their students as readers, and that we can get at the best possible pricing. And so these are just some examples. We have sorry, that is rain, I think, falling. No. Okay, sorry. Wheels going by. Okay, it sounded like rain on the roof somehow, which I thought was unlikely. But so we do have a lot of classroom favorites like Elephant and Piggy. We have, of course, an example here of a wonderful book by Ashley Bryan, but the pricing here is pretty typical to what you'll see. Our paperbacks tend to be around $3.50. Our hardcovers tend to be around $6 or $7. And we also do some work with publishers to print custom editions periodically of books only available in hardcover to bring them into paperback to lower the cost even further. And so this Rocket Says Look Up is a great example of a book that we created in that format very recently. And we also source books from publisher remainder lists, overstock lists. But even in those cases, we're being super choosy because we really, again, want the books we think are going to resonate most and also be worth a teacher's dollars. A huge percentage of our members are spending their own pocket money to get books into the hands of their kids because they do not get sufficient budget, if any budget, from the schools or programs that they're working for. And a lot of them are also the teachers who are the most entrenched in understanding that this is what their kids need, and they see the difference these books are making in the lives of those students. So my feeling is if they're going to pay even $2 a book for us, that book should still be awesome. I don't want to give them just any book. I want the books to be great. So we are picky even in the space of going through publishers' remainder lists, and we relish it. It's great. What a joy to be able to make these kinds of decisions and to put amazing books into kids' hands. And we are also super thoughtful about the categories we build. My closest colleagues and I, all of us have experience in direct service to kids. I jumped right into my story of Ashley, didn't even explain. I was an education and child study major in college. I did my teaching certification and I stumbled into bookselling. but working with teachers has been my favorite part of my work, partly because I know how hard they work and they don't have the time. They don't know what's coming out. No one is coming to them and helping them discover this. So a big part of what we're doing is helping improve discovery. And we take that very seriously. And we also think about what are the sections or categories that I would need to find or wanting to be looking at when I went on someone's site. So we have sort of traditional things like a graphic novel section. We have a funny book section because of course books don't have to be serious to communicate important ideas, but we also have some pretty unusual things. We have a diversity in STEM category, which is books about women and people in color and people of color in the sciences. We have a section called Grief, Loss, and Healing. This is very much about kids experiencing some sort of grief or loss event and helping them move through that. We have this is sort of a joke. We have a category called Empowering Stories About Women and Girls. And it's huge because we really don't buy books that are not empowering if they depict women and girls. But nevertheless, if you want to be able to find an amazing, robust section of them, we have it built for you. And many other things. We tag by character traits that support social and emotional learning. So if you are looking for books that demonstrate self-esteem, individuality, courage, leadership, our members can find them that way. And a huge, huge hallmark of what we do is this. We have a first book before I started, and again, I've been there 10 years now, began what they call the Stories for All project. And it is basically our demonstration ongoing of our commitment to representation, diversity, and inclusion in everything that we do. So we have this whole diversity and inclusion category where we actually have books tagged by identity group. And this is so teachers, program leaders can specifically shop through the lens of windows and mirrors. So Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop is a researcher who coined this concept. Most of you probably all know, but the idea is that all kids should grow up with books that act as mirrors to them, that reflect their own lives and lived experiences back to them, that validate those experiences and let them see your story is worth telling on the page, but also books that act as windows that allow you to see into the lives of other people, so you develop understanding and empathy. And so our members are able to very specifically do that by going to these identity-focused categories. And I looked this morning and I think we have almost 800 books in our you know what, I'm sorry, this is an old slide. Our African-American characters and cultures category is now called Black characters and cultures. And there are more than 700 books in that section right now today on our site. The numbers fluctuate a bit because when things fall out of stock, they disappear from there. But at any given time, that's a pretty typical number to find. We also have a Black authors and illustrators section that is a subsection of that. And I believe it's about 600 of the books are by Black authors and illustrators. So we do have a small handful that are not by Black authors and illustrators, but the predominance of those books are. And that is true for these other identity group sections as well. And then the joy of online bookselling. I miss brick and mortar. I miss being every day in a bookstore, putting books into the hands of someone in person, but I could only shelve them in one place, maybe two if I wanted to make our staff a little bit crazy. But online, we can put books everywhere they're relevant. So this is this one picture book. These are all the sections on our site in which our members will find it. And so in this way, there's diverse content woven everywhere. It is not just like we have a quote unquote multicultural section and books are shoehorned there. They are everywhere that you would expect to see them. Hopefully never will there be a section on our site that does not feel diverse. The only exception I could think is we have an animal stories section, and that is not diversity in the true sense of the word. They are animals. So that's the only thing I can think of where you would go to a category and not feel like it represented a wide range of the experiences of humans or a wide range of the diversity of races or cultures that you would hope to see in our site. My team spends a lot of time talking about books. We go through literally more than 10,000 titles a year in publisher catalogs now, and that is not all publishers. That is just the between 40 and 50 publishers we buy from. And we ask ourselves a huge range of questions. A lot of them are rooted in our knowledge of child development, but there are also very specific books, very specific questions we're asking. Does this book accurately depict kids and teens' realities and honor their stories is a huge one. Do we trust the author's expertise, research, and our firsthand knowledge of the book's content, which I like to shorthand as do your homework and put it on the page. If you aren't from this culture, community, or this isn't your background, you don't know this information well, tell us what homework you did to get there. We'll still decide whether or not we think it passes muster, meets our criteria, but that's a big one we think about a lot. And then the one that I haven't read is the one that I think is particularly unique to first book. Does this book depict experiences or suggest opportunities that are within reach of all readers, not just readers from affluent families? It used to be when I looked at the New York Times bestseller list, I felt like these are all books that for the most part, when they were created, the author or the publisher had this vision in mind of who those kids would be, and it was not inclusive of the kids that we serve. And I feel like that has changed, which is great for all of us, but it's still something we have to think about a lot. Because if you go onto our site and all of the young adult novels, for example, are about kids in boarding schools, we're not doing our job of actually reflecting back to kids their own realities, and they're probably going to have a harder time connecting with the content that they're seeing. So one of the best things about my job is that it gets harder every year, because I honestly feel like the books are getting better and better. And EB and I were talking about this a bit last night. I am calling this the golden age of children's books, what's happening right now. I am not sure it's the golden age of illustration. This was the discussion we were having. I was thinking about it later. I'm like, we were discussing traditional media and how many people are working in it right now. I am seeing incredible art all the time and in going in new directions. These are some incredible examples right here. But what I'm really seeing even more so are just ideas that are pushing the envelope in important ways, respecting kids' knowledge, which is something I think Ashley was very always committed to, is understanding kids have incredible abilities. They can take in a lot of content. We need to be honest with them. We owe it to them also. And I'm seeing more and more content that I think puts very important ideas on the page in ways that are completely appropriate for kids, accessible to them. And I think it's a really exciting time. And when I look at this array of covers, these are all books published in the last 5 years, just a random selection of some of my favorites. This just excites me, because part of what's happening with the book banning is that it's happening because these ideas are important and we have this diversity of kids. We didn't have these books to ban 10 years ago. We were getting there. EB, Ashley, all these people were laying the foundation, doing this critically important work to get us to this place where we are today. And I just get excited that every year I look at this spread and it's getting better. So this slide is just some of the books that are coming out later this year that you probably haven't seen yet, that our team fell in love with. I'm so excited that these books are coming out. I could have filled this slide with many, many more titles. My team is choosing about 75 new books every month that go up on our site. Again, out of that 10,000 we saw. So there's a lot we're passing up that are also great. But this just gives you a sense of some of the terrific things that are happening in the world of children's books. And I included, I'm going to just, if I had time, I would tell you about all of them because they're all great. But Mr. S here in the left-hand corner by Monica Arnaldo is one of the funniest picture books I have ever read. It is about kindergartners who show up on the first day of school and there's a sandwich on the table at the front of the school and it says Mr. S on the board, but there's no teacher. And their teacher doesn't come, their teacher doesn't come. And eventually they start wondering, is Mr. S Mr. Sandwich? Could this sandwich be our teacher? It is hilarious. So that's one example of a book that's not serious, but that's just a joyful, wonderful celebration of reading. Salat in Secret by that's by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow, and Hatem Ali, illustrated by Hatem Ali, is a terrific book about a kid who wants to pray in school. He is Muslim and he wants to find a place to put down his prayer mat, but he's a little intimidated to ask this question of his teacher. And then he has an experience with his dad modeling that for him that gives him the courage to have this conversation. And it is just a book that, so well done. And then The Walk by Winsome Bingham and illustrated by E.B. Lewis. I was telling E.B. I just read last week. This is a gem of a picture book about a child and family member walking together to the polls on voting day. And it is just a wonderful book about a small moment that celebrates this experience of doing a thing that is what we all do. That is the sense that comes through in the book, is this is what we do. This is how we participate in our democracy. This is how we also come together as a community. And it is terrific. And that's coming out in September. So yes, that's my soapbox about, there's so many good books happening, being created right now. We have an obligation to get them in the hands of kids and get them in the hands of all kids, not just kids in affluent communities. And I also just want to point out, these books are not just great for kids. These books also, Ashley talks a lot about the child in us. These books are healing for adults as well. This was a post that one of our members put up, and her comment was about, saying, I wish I'd had these authors as an Indigenous kid in public school. I see this moment happen with adults all the time where they read a book and they say, God, I wished I'd had this book. It breaks my heart that anyone has to say that, but it also, again, to me is a sign of progress and the fact that there are so many good things happening and that publishers are finally doing more. I'm not saying they're doing enough, but they are doing more, and we're seeing it happen every day. And it makes me think, of course, again, as I said, of Ashley and his comments about the importance of the child in us and never let the child within you die. I think children's books help keep that alive in us adults. It's definitely partly alive in me because I get to spend my time with these books every day. We also offer on the marketplace a curated selection of classroom resources, some of which you see here on the screen, free shipping, invitations to big book giveaways. We have partners who will sponsor book trucks going into communities, online events with the authors and other experts periodically. Some of which are mentioned here. We have a trauma toolkit that our members download. There's literally, we have many, many resources. These are just a couple visual examples. We have GM partnership where we've been doing events all year with different engineers who work for GM, and they've been really interesting. And a lot of our members have been excited to use that as STEM content for their students. And they have also supported some live stream events with authors like Pablo Cartaya is a great example. But the coolest thing I think that we do with our partners that I mentioned earlier when I said we're trying to make books free is that a lot of our partners, what they do is work with us to fund codes for our members to go onto the marketplace and choose any book they want, or they will extend the pricing on our site by offering codes to our members that are taking additional discount off X books in X category. So literally every month, we have some codes going out to our members that are like, take an additional 30% off all the books in our Black Characters and Culture section. That is funded by a partner of ours. Or here's $50 to spend. Again, here's this promo code from Build-A-Bear. Through this partnership with Build-A-Bear, they got out 166,000 books to our members last year. And they also gave away 20,000 furry friends. These are full-size plush teddy bears that went to our members to be used as reading buddies. And so that's just one example of the amazing corporate partnerships that we have. We have an enormous number of corporate partners, and also are grateful every day for all the donors who contribute to us so we can do this great stuff for our members. And one of our partners over the years has been the Ashley Bryan Center. Over the course of 3 years, we distributed 25,000 free copies of Beautiful Blackbird to members in Maine, New York City, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. And I'm saying members, they may not have been members before this opportunity, but they signed up with us so they could go onto our site and receive these books from us. And those books, we got great feedback on. I gave one example of a testimonial here from an educator who was speaking to the fact that most of her students did not have books at home to read. And it was exciting for them to send Beautiful Blackbird home as the first book for those kids to have in their home libraries. And this is really what it is about. When members post things like, when you're feeling giddy because you didn't pay a dime for these, thank you, first book. This is an incredible stack of books this member chose really, really well, I have to say. She was clearly in a middle or high school. And this is an amazing selection of titles that she picked. And then we get this kind of reaction from kids. This is actually a still from a video in which this child unwrapped this book and went, which is not a new book. It is a very old book, but it with her was one she already recognized and had read in her classroom, and her teacher had picked it out. It was especially meaningful for her to get it. And her enthusiasm just says everything to me. We hear all the time from our members that what we're doing makes a difference. This comment, easily the best resource I found in 20 years of teaching, which makes me emotional, just came through a couple weeks ago. First book helps me be the librarian I want to be is a review we got last week. This is what we're here to do, to help teachers who are doing, the most important work in this country, be better at doing what it is that they do and helping our kids have better experiences and learn and grow as humans. We have gotten some incredible notes. I know this is just a sea of text on the screen. I apologize. But this is a member who reached out because she had gotten an email from us apologizing that her order might be delayed. And she wanted to say, you guys are awesome. Please do not stress. So much is out of our control right now, but what is within our control is the grace we show each other. Take care of yourselves. Know that we spread your books like wildflower seeds across our district. Teachers and students are being exposed to representation and ideas that wouldn't be possible without you. You are making the world a better place, and I'm willing to wait for it. And of course, we all caught the Hamilton reference at the end of that. But then the one that really gets me is this note we got from a pediatric ER doctor during the pandemic that concluded with, on behalf of the children from Harlem, thank you for helping us become better readers. Your support provides the hope we all need during this pandemic. When an ER doctor during a pandemic tells you the children's book you're providing are the things that are giving them hope, that is a good reason to just get up and do the work again the next day. And then, of course, the most important audience. This is a note we got from a child. Thanks for giving us lots of different books, and thanks for the books we like. They're wonderful books, and they're the prettiest books ever, and they're perfect for me. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for listening. This is, of course, an image of Ashley. I took this photo when I went to see him in Houston in 2020. And I had brought him a copy of this book, The Oldest Student, How Mary Walker Learned to Read by Rita Lorraine Hubbard, illustrated by the amazing Oge Mora. This is a book, if you don't know it, about a woman named Mary Walker, true story, nonfiction, who was born enslaved. She was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. She grew up, raised a family, and at the age of 116, she decided it was time for her to learn to read, because, of course, that was a right that had been denied to her as a child. And she was ready at that point to invest the time at the age of 116 to learn how to read. And she did. She saw a sign in her retirement center. She went and took classes, and she was finally able to read the family Bible that had been with her her entire life. And she died at the age of 121. So at the time, my hope was that Ashley was going to beat her record. But to me, this is an example of us having denied Mary Walker a basic civil right by not allowing her to learn how to read as a child, not teaching her to read as a child. And I think about her and the rights she was denied. I think about Ashley and the challenges he encountered, the rights that were denied to him, the things he encountered in World War II. And I feel like what we are doing is helping to create a better world in which hopefully those things are not happening as often. And by telling stories of people like Mary Walker and true stories of kids, we're also, again, helping to hopefully prevent history from repeating itself. So yes, thank you. That's my talk. Sorry, I think I just went over a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Our third speaker on the panel is Kirsten Cappy. Kirsten was recently commended for creating a culture of welcoming and belonging in U.S. schools from the American Library Association. She's worked in the nonprofit world and has worked with Daniel and Marcia Mintner, co-founding the Beautiful Blackbird Festival event every year in Maine that honors the legacy of Ashley Bryan. And of course, that gives away thousands of books every year and celebrates Black creators from all over. Kirsten is currently the executive director of I'm Your Neighbor Books, a nonprofit which is looking to change the conversation on immigration and to really think about centering the dialogue on immigration in very humanizing ways. Please welcome Kirsten Cappy.
I dreamed last night, Javadka, that my PowerPoint was also different. And it was in fact Gareth's images from the Odyssey. And Lynn said, but you promised to do a talk on how Ashley's life was like the Odyssey. And I was like, I did? Okay. So that is not this talk. There will be no analogies to classic literature. So I was standing on a Maine beach a few days ago thinking about standing here, and I was thinking about all of us traveling to this one spot to try and capture the wonder that Ashley Bryan lit inside of us. And of course, by Lynn's other assignment, reaching for how that wonder got tangled up in my work. Ashley was entangled with the Maine shore. As you know, he pulled washed up objects from the seaweed and turned those broken bits into marvels, into sculpture and stained glass, puppets, and more. Oh, and I have a clicker, don't I? And that, I feel, is how he so often created stories. He took what was born on the water or lost on the water and returned it to his people and then gifted it to all of us. Like the shore, the African diaspora intricately remakes the landscape every day, tide after brilliant tide. I love, we know that Ashley's parents came to these shores from Antigua, and I think truly always seeing their son, they let Ashley free to explore his neighborhood, to listen, to meet, and to make art at such a young age. And in doing so, his parents set Ashley on a path where he restored and remade people in whatever neighborhood or medium he found himself in. The neighborhood I found myself in when I very belatedly met Ashley in his books was Portland, Maine, 2001. I'd actually just moved into a neighborhood and my neighbor saw me in the driveway and said, "Down the street, there's going to be a guy talking tonight and I hear he reads books really well." Yeah, Ashley read a book really well, which was followed by a dinner that I will never forget. So I came to Portland. I actually had just finished a job in publishing. My last day was 9/11, and I left New York with the towers literally burning behind me. And I was headed to Portland to start an indie book fair business, to bring the latest children's books directly to students and to teachers. And a month after arrival, I was doing my first middle grade book fair. And I was so smug about my multicultural book knowledge and what I'd laid out. So I'd laid out all the latest Latinx, Black, Asian, Indigenous, LGBTQ. There was no IA then. And I'd laid them out on the tables. And then I opened the front doors. And the first students to come through were two girls in hijab who asked me where my books on Somalia were. They were immediately followed by two immensely polite boys that asked for my section on Islam. It was a month after 9/11, and I was meeting my first Muslim teenagers, and starting an enterprise to engage the Maine community in children's literature, and I had absolutely nothing for these kids. Why? Because in 2001, publishers were simply not telling the stories of new arrivals, not just Somali stories, but African immigrant stories were nowhere in sight. And books featuring Muslim families, there were none. My beloved book world was failing not only the Somali Muslim kids who needed to see themselves represented, but their long-term classmates who could have used books to expand their knowledge of their Somali classmates and at that incredibly important time of Islam. Not knowing then that Ashley was first generation Antiguan, I reached for his literature when I remade my book fairs and my work with first generation Somali, Ethiopian, and Sudanese American students. I just remembered that I was also using Fire on the Mountain, was a big part of that time. So I put Ashley's parables and folk tales in their hands, and these books were a return for my readers, a return to a storytelling home that they had inhabited only weeks, months, or years before. The more classrooms and community spaces I walked into with Ashley and Evie's books in my hands, the more people I met who cared about building belonging in this refugee resettlement city. By 2012, so 11 years later, the children's book world started to diversify, and within that blessed growth came 4 dozen books that represented the new immigrant communities that filled the nation's neighborhoods. Because not only did we not have any Muslim titles or Somali titles, we had virtually no books until 2012 that represented the new immigrant community. with those Portlanders that cared fiercely about belonging, immigrant friends from Ghana and Iran, children's book authors, educators, and librarians, a project named I'm Your Neighbor Books began to take shape. At first, it was just a mutual promise to pay fierce attention to each book that emerged that represented modern immigrants like our students. The group shared each emerging book in an attempt to supplement and even subvert the dominance of the Ellis Island story in classrooms and in the national imagination. A story that had, in my mind, passed into history. We felt that if we did not recast the dominant narrative of white migration from Europe, then our classrooms would continue to center white America and our multicultural, multilingual, multiracial immigrant students. Not to mention how the heroic Ellis Island story and the repeated and beloved phrase, "We are all a nation of immigrants," leaves out Indigenous people and those Americans forcibly brought to these shores in the largest crime against humanity the world has ever known. I love this student. When the 45th president implemented the Muslim ban in 2017, I'm Your Neighbor Books' commitment to fierce attention became a call for fierce action. If we believed that a significant sense of belonging could be built for immigrant families when they saw their cultures featured in books, then we had to get more books into families' hands and into the public spaces they frequented. And if we believe that books featuring immigrant families could build the cultural competency and empathy of the long-term community, then the new emerging immigrant children's book genre, we call it a genre, needed to get into every corner of America quickly and cheaply. Five years ago, we sketched out the first welcoming library. Oh, sadness, does it go? There it goes. A collection of 30 picture books that collectively tell the story of today's immigrant and new generation communities. With a pop-up book display, the books and companion discussion questions travel between locations in these two red crates. Appearing in unexpected places, the books disrupt when and how we talk about immigration. Within that collection are the Somali, Ethiopian, and Sudanese books that I was so desperate for in 2001. The books that I feel Ashley manifested by never taking his lovely, loving gaze off of the diaspora. In those books, students saw themselves and each other. A welcoming library visited a summer school classroom of up-and-coming third graders. And one afternoon, the teacher pulled my friend Jamal, the first Somali picture book published in the US, from the welcoming library to read aloud. When she read from this spread, a Somali boy in the back of the classroom raised his hand. She never interrupted her read alouds for a hand raise, but she called on him because he had never spoken in class the entire summer. And as far as she knew, he had never spoken a word to any of his fellow students. When she called on him, he said, "You didn't read the whole page." And she looked back at the book and she said, "Oh, I read the whole page." She was assuming that his limited English skills, because of those, he hadn't understood what she had read. He walked up to the front of the room, politely asked for the book, and proceeded to read the photograph of the Quran that's on the page. And he knew that passage so well. If you can see the photograph actually of the page of the Quran gets cut off on the bottom of the book page. And he knew the passage so well that he completed the passage from memory. Now, there were two other Muslim boys in that class who knew what an astonishing act of knowledge and intelligence this was, and they started to applaud. And the other students, of course, joined in. They're third graders, and soon all the kids in the room were on their feet cheering for this boy. Now, prior to the reading, he had been seen as deficient, right? Deficient in English, deficient in his communication, deficient in his ability to play with the others, and I would dare say deficient in ability in general. But the presence of a book that represented him created an environment where that deficit lens was shattered and where an environment of welcoming and belonging was built. He was seen as Ashley Bryan saw every single reader, whether he met them or not. So welcoming libraries are now shared from 130 school and library hubs across the country. And this year, because of a donation from a children's book author, Philip Hose, any library or classroom can borrow a collection free for a month, regardless of whether or not they're a member of any of our hubs. Additionally, we're building larger permanent grade level collections that move between classrooms on custom library carts. I never thought I'd say those words, custom library carts of my very own making. And even larger collections that are built in libraries under this signed invitation, read to welcome, read to belong. Additionally, refugee children settling in Maine now are given a bag of books as soon as they arrive. I just ordered a new set yesterday, and we put a quote from Juju Morales's Dreamers on the front, and it says, the book bag says, books became our language, books became our home. And across the country, when immigrant communities or individual books are maligned, I'm Your Neighbor Books has been sending rapid response book boxes to counter hate. And all the books for those projects are curated from now a 1,200 book immigrant and new generation K through 12 genre that we track and list. We categorize these books by the communities they represent and by over 100 cross-cultural themes. 1,200 books a decade later is a 3,200% increase in representation of our new arrival and new generation communities. This nonprofit's work is done by a team of 2 immigrant and 2 next generation women, and an immigrant-led board that brings fierceness and a little touch of Ashley's wonder to each project. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Ashley. The last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to return to placing Ashley Bryan's books into the hands of new arrival and first generation children. The nonprofits Indigo Arts Alliance, run by the astonishing Daniel and Marcia Minter, Diverse Bookfinder, and I'm Your Neighbor Books, founded the Beautiful Blackbird Children's Festival to honor the legacy of Ashley Bryan. The festival, we're now planning our 4th year, celebrates the children's books and creators of the African diaspora. During the devastating summer of 2020, the Blackbird team put Ashley's declaration that Black is beautiful into the mouths of an entire city in lockdown. The team produced video read-alouds and remotely led art projects and the Blackbirds dance, and took Ashley's words to the streets. This is a mural in front of Indigo Arts Alliance. The program, including now a traveling exhibit of Daniel Minter's illustration, starts locally and spreads nationally. There are 3 years of educator toolkits available at beautifulblackbird.com. Each year, at least 1,400 K through 5 children receive a bag of books. In every single bag is an Ashley Bryan title, a Black American title, and a Black immigrant title, all purchased from Allison Morris's brilliantly curated collection at First Book Marketplace. We were so pleased to distribute the first and stunning When Stars Are Scattered, which is a graphic novel set in Dadaab refugee camp about 2 Somali boys. The Beautiful Blackbird Children's Book Festival has celebrated Black books along with bicycles, on the lawns of public housing, in city parks, and at art museums, children's museums, and in theaters. We have entangled a whole community of Black and brown children in Ashley Bryan's wonder. To close, I'd love to share a tribute to Ashley created by the festival and its featured creators in 2021-22, all produced during lockdown.
The Blackbird's Party. Written by Ashley Bryan. Pictures by
I feel like it's really difficult to overemphasize the impact that Ashley Bryan has had on all of us, not just authors and illustrators, but just readers of children's literature.
His legacy really does connect to the work that I do. In my work, I do try to emulate the types of joy that he brought into his books.
I love the fact that he also opened the door for a lot of Black illustrators and artists and more Black illustrators and authors like me. And I'm really deeply grateful for that. I just want to say thank you for sharing your beauty and your legacy to the world, Mr. Bryan.
It's very important that Black and brown children of color see themselves in all ways of life, that they see other children represented in books. They want to be a part of that representation so they can feel proud of themselves.
I didn't actually realize how many of Mr. Bryan's works I was actually familiar with until I started going through a lot of the covers and the books.
Ashley Bryan, a poet for all time. When I was writing this story of 12-year-old Amira, I thought of Ashley Bryan's cadence, musicality, and respect and love of poetry.
He lets you know you matter. Thank you, Ashley, for seeing me and so many others. You give us wings.
I was taught early by my parents, create a community wherever you are.
I met Ashley over 20 years ago, and the first thing that really struck me about Ashley was his kindness. He's a Renaissance man between being a musician, a writer, an illustrator, a painter, and a poet. I mean, it's just endless.
He's helped me envision myself as an artist and creator and a person who is present always. He's modeled this existence for me, and I really appreciate that.
Wings a flip, a
So I never have separations of anything in my life. It's mental. You have to work for it every day in your mind. But I tell myself, whatever I'm doing is the most important thing at that moment. I have to validate each moment of my day, and so I can validate my life.
Black is beautiful, aha!
Black is beautiful, aha!
Thank you all. The Blackbird's Party.
So I hope you all become entangled. Thanks.
I think we should take 10 minutes and the coffee break. If you need coffee first, if we go out and get it, or we'll take 10 minutes to have a few questions. Yeah, yeah, come up for it.
You're the lead.
EB, are you coming back up?
You're part of our panel. Question.
Not you. You're supposed to come here.
After, in 10 minutes.
Yeah. He's coming back. Okay, thank you so much to all of you and just the work that each of you is doing in such different spaces and dimensions around the creation of children's literature and the advocacy and distribution of children's literature. It's really just such important work. And yeah, so thank you to all of this, just a wonderful panel. So I'm going to ask a question about the long view, because I think the long view is important, and each of the presenters spoke to it in some way. So yes, we've seen this incredible explosion in the field of children's literature. I've seen it through my 30 years change just in the most radical of ways, and even more recently in the last 5 to 10 years. Finally, there's this attention to children's literature that there hasn't been before, taking it seriously. When I first started in the field, there were a few scholars studying children's literature, and now we have the field is secure. You know, children's literature is taken very seriously. It's talked about. It's understood to be important in the lives of young people. Children's literature is considered like art objects. Like, I mean, how can you look at the work of E.B. Lewis and see the artistry? It's just like, you know, powerful. And to put that into children's hands is immense. And wow, that we've finally recognized that. We also recognize that children's literature are cultural objects, right? And they shape the conversations that happen and the way culture moves and the kinds of dialogue that young people can have and the sorts of stuff we can think about with young people, whether we're in community centers or schools or families. And this is such an important space. And I've always believed in that space. And it's been super exciting to see more people believe in that space and believe in the work and take it seriously. So all of that is wonderful and exciting and amazing. The question I have, one question goes back to EB. You said, you know, this is art. This isn't like, this is visual storytelling. This is art, and art is scary. And today, now that children's literature is being recognized in ways that take it more seriously and that see it for the sophistication that it is, for the power that it has to do real work in the world, we see it as dangerous. And we're seeing that, you know, it is being, so we have this wonderful like explosion going on. And then also we have this pushback against it. And so I'm curious to hear from each of you, you know, how you're thinking about that navigation of, you know, the importance of doing this work and to do it in ways that are real and that don't hold back and that don't oversimplify or reduce conversations about diversity to like simple categories. And to keep working at it in a context where it's become super, super dangerous. And maybe you can start us off.
My concern, because of what's going on in the country in terms of the censorship of the work, and my books have been attacked, probably more so than anybody else. There have been more books on the Black diaspora dealing with slavery. than anyone in the country. And so from that perspective, it speaks to the issue of how powerful the work is. You know, that they feel that a children's book has to be removed from the shelf because it's talking about truth. And I mean, I know what my books are. I mean, I'm only choosing those titles to me that speak to humanity, that will hopefully change the world. That's what, you know, that's my kinship to Ashley, creating works that will change the world. And so it concerns me deeply of where this is going to go, and needing people to stand in that space and say, enough is enough. Because if we don't, then it will, who knows what's going to happen? Where does that lead? You know, in a country that we say the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
You know, how true is that?
Yeah.
So that's
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think about this every day. I find it terrifying. I feel like there's sort of this irony happening right now of saying these ideas are so important and it's not appropriate for kids to have them. And there's some disconnect between that and the fact that we've never invested sufficiently in our children's education at all. And I think that's also part of the reason what's happening now is able to happen, is because there's been this fraying in the fabric of education across the country in terms of support for public education in particular, and support for teacher training over the years. The number of teacher training programs has declined. The number of people interested in going into teaching has declined. This has been a crisis that has been unfolding for decades, and that has never been adequately addressed. And so I agree that people are now recognizing the validity of children's literature on a new level, but that hasn't translated into more teachers entering schools, already knowing a body of literature that's available and knowing how to use these books to teach or to use with students in general, or knowing that they exist. And I think there's this double whammy here too, where this isn't really even about these books, it's about these ideas. And so the books are unfortunately they're sort of have been found to be this easy target in that conversation. But what's really happening is a larger push to undermine local governments, replace people on school boards. And this pivot point around these objectionable books has been found to be the thing that does that. And I think that there are people who are also like, well, I mean, I think initially when it started, there was the hope that this was going to blow over, but it turned out to be easy to generate headlines by showing up at school board meetings and making these calls. And there's also this situation where a lot of other families are saying, well, we don't know, we haven't read that book. How do we know if it's not objectionable? And it's like, but it's not about what's in that book. It is about the ideas. And I think people need to be very worried about the fact that what's really trying to happen is silencing these ideas and discussion around them, and that this is the beginning of erosion of many, many other rights, right? This is starting with something that they see as small, but also I want to say that this is not small. If I am someone who identifies as trans in my school, or has never seen someone who is openly trans, and I'm specifically using that example because it is the number one, like the first thing that gets banned in a lot of these discussions. This is a community of kids who are already questioning their identities, who have never seen someone like them and are at a very high risk of suicide already. And we are taking away this simple tool that gives them some validity, some sort of positivity, a model, an idea that they could live their lives as the people they are. And that is distressing to me, because that's not a small thing. That is huge for that kid, right? It is huge for you to be able to see yourself on the page, as you modeled so beautifully in that example you gave as well. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like what needs to happen is exactly this, that everyone needs to be standing up for these communities where these challenges are happening, and not just viewing it as a thing that is happening over there, because it is not just over there, it is everywhere. And so to the extent that you can sort of pay more attention, get involved, follow, I wish I had all the hashtags here. I wasn't prepared for this question. But the communities in Florida and Texas in particular, where a lot of this banning is happening, figuring out how you can be involved. And there's toolkits for what you can do in your own communities as well. Actually, We Need Diverse Books just created a whole amazing resource page that they just launched last week that is all resources around book bannings. And it's worth going through and seeing all of the resources that they link out to and the sort of advice that they are giving to people in their communities about what to do if books are being challenged or banned in your community.
And I would agree with all of that terror and call for action. If you follow everylibrary.org, they give you action points, people to write to, things to say. But I also would say that kids are not going to stand for it. Yes. I don't know if anybody saw the footage yesterday of all the students that went into the Nashville State House saying their chant was, you ban books, you ban drag, but we're leaving in body bags. They know, and there is some degree in which we can raise complacent kids. We don't, but our schools can, we can, our churches can. But when they see they see what's at threat, they see what's going to be taken away. We're turning them into thinkers and we're turning them into activists. I briefly showed that graphic novel When Stars Are Scattered, which came out in March 2020 with no publicity during the pandemic. And teachers found that book. Because of Allison, that book was in the First Book Marketplace and it was available for $5 or $6 a piece. And it spread all over the country through teachers. I was just at a conference and Omar Mohammed is the subject of the book, the co-author of that graphic novel, and he runs an organization called Refugees Strong that is bringing school supplies, books, built a library, is doing menstrual justice for Muslim girls in Dadaab refugee camp, an amazing organization. And he said 90% of the funds for his nonprofit come from kids all over the country who are doing selling friendship bracelets and doing bake sales and walkathons to get money. So I feel like I echo all of that and also say, these books are also raising kids that care about each other, and maybe they're going to save us.
in spite of it all.
Yeah.
And I would say supporting kids and supporting teachers and librarians right now, because the other thing that's happening is the self-censoring and the soft censoring that's happening, where teachers are afraid to bring these books into their classroom for fear that someone's going to come after them, and they care about their kids and they want to be there for their kids and be able to do their jobs. And we need to feel like we need to be able to give them the support to feel that they can do those jobs.
Yeah, there's something, Evie, that you said yesterday about your process in creating a book. And it struck me because I heard it in Javaka's talk as well. And it was like the way that creating a book as an arts process is a process of discovery, curiosity, research. It's a learning process for yourself, you know, and you enter that process and you learn and you're open to learning. And
that's what's great about a book, is that all that.
That's what I was just going to say. What happens for the student?
Yeah. That from the author's perspective, from the illustrator's perspective, and then the brain trust of all those individuals who are there to make that book come to fruition.
Yeah.
You know, and the purpose of that is to create these ideas, you know, positive ideas. You know, we're not putting out negative ideas, we're putting out positive ideas for change. And what happens there in a society where critical thinking becomes we don't teach critical thinking in this country. You know, it has always been feared, you know, the critical thinker. And you know that as soon as you remove the arts from education, you're showing and saying, we are removing that. We don't want the thought process involved. We don't want you to be, you know, to think critically, we don't want you to access to have self-assessment, awareness, all those kind of things that come and that are part of that process of making something from self to nothing. You have blank, and then from blank, you have something that has been created, and then you have to think about it and question, say, was this a good effort? Or do I need to, there's a saying, creativity art is, how's it go? Creativity is allowing oneself to make mistakes. The art is knowing which ones to keep. So having that fear removed, letting them have that and understanding the freedoms that this evokes, the arts, and having children to understand. We teach in this country the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and that's is the most important. But we have children basically who can read and have no sense of self. There's a great saying by Mark Twain: the 2 most important days in one's life is the day you were born and the day you realize why you were. Okay? That means each one of us has a reason and a purpose for existence. And for me, as a teacher, as an educator, I've been teaching for over 38 years. And I want my children to have a purpose-driven life. We don't provide that. We're shortchanging them because we don't ask the question. We always ask the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? The better question is, what do you like to do? What gets you excited? What gets you out of bed? What makes you want to go this and say, nah, I don't want to look at this. And we have these things, my phone is over there, but it's the thing that we have in our pockets. That's why children teachers having such a difficult time because of TikTok. That 2-minute drill, that their attention span is only that length of time. And so when you start to introduce these ideas, the society says, no, we're only going to limit your thought and process and intelligence to this level of 2-minute drill. Well, you're getting me started. So
Well, I think we probably need to close.
I just want to build on a point of EBs, which is in 1997, the Getty Foundation did a study which indicated that students with arts education made better business people because they had the critical thinking skills. And at that same time, Richard Riley was Clinton's Secretary of Education. He had a software company in South Carolina, and he said he would hire an individual with arts education over somebody with computer science because they had the creativity, they had the problem.
Not just better business people, but better people, like humans.
Brain working simultaneously.
Right.
We get fiber optics is because someone is actually implementing your critical and analytical brain at the same time.
It's just like an interesting connection I'm seeing between like this process oriented curiosity, engagement, and this pushback that we're seeing, right? And so I hear you all saying this need for us to fight, which is true. We all need to advocate, fight for this quality literature, and also to push for this other thing, this way of engaging it in a way, that is more like the way that you create.
Oh, it's exposure. That's
that
what
way.
These books are. These books are about exposure.
An different invitation.
In a time that I grew up, I'm a child of the 50s. And so I played in the streets, hopscotch and double dutch and all the things that, hide and go seek, children don't do anymore. We have now relegated them to play within this little playground of their front yard or inside their house even. And so to give them that access that they need, the quickest way to do this is by putting that book in their hand and saying, look what's outside. Look what's outside of this comfort zone and then school is should be a safe zone. We can't say that now, but it should be a safe zone. It should be a place where kids can go and have ideas and have the safe to feel that I am in a place that I can explore.
Yeah, the opposite of indoctrination, right? It's the opposite.
I think we should take that coffee break now just because it's getting late. And let's come back at 10 after.
Thank you so
11.
much to the presenters. Very, very much.